Good afternoon and welcome to the virtual edition of Houston Techfest 2020. Before we start, I want to make you aware of a feature in the presentation that will make the session more interactive. Please make note of the question mark icon at the upper right-hand side of the presentation screen. Clicking that icon will open the question and answer feature, which will allow you to send the moderator questions to be delivered to our presenter at the appropriate time. Please feel free to post anytime during the session. We are also excited to let you know that Code Mag is giving everyone a free subscription. Houston Techfest will be emailing everyone a link after the event. We are proud to present Dan Reed, Agile Coach at BP, who will be sharing Kanban at Scale case study with Azure DevOps. Dan, take it away.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to jump right into it. We've got quite a few slides to cover, and I just want to make sure that we give plenty of room to answer some questions at the end. So we are going to talk about a case study, but not the specifics of it today on how we've implemented Kanban at Scale across multiple portfolios. And so when we start looking at scaling, we had lots of options. This is an industry-wide view of different frameworks for scaling. Kanban is used within a number of these. So popular scaling frameworks are SAFe, Scaled Agile Framework, Scrum of Scrums. Spotify model is real popular as well. So several of these have been used to scale from the team level across multiple teams up to the project program level and to the portfolio level. And so our case study is covering multiple portfolios, but this talk will focus on what the implementation kind of best practices were and the way we adopted it for a single portfolio. And so Kanban was a natural choice for us. I'm a Kanban certified trainer as well as a SAFe certified trainer. And when we looked at our problems that we needed to address, Kanban looked like a perfect fit. And so we started with that. Now it's scaled across 5 different portfolios. So in the scaling frameworks on the right here, you have traditional ways of scaling. Waterfall up through portfolio project management, program management, and then a lot of agile practices, lean and agile practices in the middle. The SAFe and disciplined agile are probably 2 of the most popular ones out there today. But as we start looking at our teams and analyzing what it would take to scale, we realized that a lot of the teams were also using Kanban. And so they had started with Scrum often, but were challenged with Scrum and had switched to Kanban. But we had teams that we discovered across using multiple frameworks. And so I want to just pause right there and take just a quick reminder of Kanban and its principles and practices that we used as a foundation to look at how we would scale across the portfolio. So just a quick review, change management principles are start with what we do now, right? Don't make major changes, just model the way the teams are working today. So we had teams doing traditional project management, traditional vendor management, Scrum, Kanban, DevOps. We had a wide variety of flavors. So one of our principles is just start with what you do today. Again, agree to pursue incremental improvements through evolutionary change. So make small changes with measurable results as you move forward. Encourage acts of leadership at all levels. So we really are looking to decentralize decision making to speed up delivery of work and make better decisions about the value that we're delivering. Then we've got some service delivery principles that we also focus on. And we focus everything on value. Don't do anything that doesn't add value to the system, and try to remove anything that doesn't add direct value to the system. And so also manage the work, not the workers. Let the team self-organize around work, and let your policies or your teaming agreements drive delivery. And so regularly review at your retrospectives how your policies are working and adapt to improved methods of for reducing delivery time or increasing value. So those are the principles. Practices real quick. Visualize your work. This 100% transparency at work was our model, and it's extremely powerful when you do that. It enables us to start looking at things completely different than we did before, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Limit our work in progress. So how do we balance the chaos of the system that we had today was by looking at limiting setting work in progress limits for things in progress. And some teams really struggled with that, but the majority of them all loved it once they were able to get over the initial learning curve associated with it. Manage the flow of work based on measurable results. So we measure the actual performance of the work flowing through the Kanban system, and then we take actions based on that to improve the flow of work. Make our policies explicit. That means we just need to take the discipline to write down what our teaming agreements are and design those into the system such that they're readily accessible to the team. It's their ways of working. Everybody's agreed to it. And then we review those on a regular basis to make sure if we need to modify them. Establish fast feedback loops. This is critical for it to work at the portfolio level. We used to have 2-week status meetings at the portfolio level. We would escalate things to leadership there. It would take them another days or weeks to respond to it. So typical turnaround time for escalation was at the week level or 2 to 3 week time frames. We're able to turn that into minutes and hours. So our feedback loops now for escalation issues are typically resolved in a few hours instead of weeks. We'll look a little more about feedback loops in a minute too. So improve collaboratively and evolve experimentally. So we use scientific methods to measure and improve how we improve the system on a regular basis, continuous process improvement or practice improvement. Okay, so our portfolio that we were looking at has some characteristics of they were doing all kinds of work, CapEx, OpEx work, so they were doing projects, programs, support, standard operational, keep the lights on type of activities. Teams were typically 10 to 24 teams in a portfolio, and they were structured such that not all of them, but some of them had programs or services. And so the teams were organized into a hierarchy of services. Team size ran anywhere from 1 to 12 teams was kind of average. Sometimes we'd get into bigger teams, but for the most part, they ran on, we like them at the Agile size, right? Pizza size, but we do have some teams that are 1 or 2 members. And then we had a diversity of frameworks being used and tools. Scrum was very popular, but a lot of teams were really struggling with being able to deliver it because they had not only project work or new product development, they were also doing operations, and they were struggling with meeting their commitments. Kanban was being used by probably about half the teams, and some of them with a lot of success. Operations guys were having a lot of success with DevOps, ITIL, support operations, waterfall, traditional project management, vendor management, where we had one project manager managing a handful of vendors, the work associated with them, and they didn't have access to our ADO always, our Azure DevOps instance. So we had to figure out the best way to manage that. We'll take a look at it. Lots of different tools too. Teams were using Project Online, ServiceNow to manage their tickets, Microsoft Teams boards. Many of them were already using Azure DevOps, but they were on different instances. So part of this was to migrate as many as possible to a common organization, and that allowed us to automate the reporting. Some common challenges: commitments not being met, no transparency. The work leadership couldn't tell what the teams are doing or how it aligned to the strategic objectives that they had committed to. Very fast pace of change, lots of changing in, issues these days in oil and gas. Very chaotic environment. And so that was kind of the challenges going into this. We were able to address all of those. And we'll take a look at how we did that here in a second. Some of the critical success factors for our success, though, we're having a clear vision and messaging from leadership. So we do use, when we go across portfolios, kind of an invitation model. We wait for, you know, different portfolios to say, hey, I like what you're doing, I would like some of that, and invite us in to look at their transformation type activities. But within a portfolio, you need all the teams lined up to do it successfully. And so it requires leadership to have a clear message about our purpose and intent of what we're doing. And once we get that, it makes it a lot easier to then align each of teams, like 24 teams. It requires some alignment there. Strategic to tactical alignment of a work was another critical success factor. We're committing to things and making investments. We want to be able to show progress toward those every few days, or at least in a week kind of time frame. We before had months of going by without seeing clear deliverables. So small batch delivery it was critical to make sure we had that in place. Also, simple, lightweight kind of ways of working. Make sure we weren't incurring any overhead associated with trying to implement this across the portfolio. And then the other critical success factor was this automated real-time reporting. And so we'll take a look at that. Strategy that we used to try to go after was 100% transparency in order to build trust, which enables us to decentralize decision making, to get better, faster decisions by the teams, to speed up delivery and reduce bottlenecks in the system. So we're trying to remove waste in the delivery time or development delivery time. And so transparency is critical for us to be able to enable us to trust the teams and push that decentralized decision making down. We also used explicit policies as our decision frameworks there. And so that helped with the transparency, not only of the work and the status of the work, but how we work as well. Commitment to continuous improvement. So we measure everything in our Kanban systems, and that allows us to tell how we can make a try and experiment and see the impact of that. And so we have built our cadences or meetings such that they're driven with those performance measures. And so each of our performance review meetings uses dashboards and our system lead time and cycle time to make decisive action about how to improve the system. Make sure we enable collaboration in all of our meetings. So try to get them to go from status report sessions to actually collaboration meetings where we're taking action to improve things. And we were able to implement those system performance dashboards or Kanban boards in Azure DevOps. And by doing that, we were able to remove 80% of the overhead that we had with preparing for traditional status reports. And so rather than have a weekly status report meeting by the teams, check for the guys that were doing traditional stuff, we were able to automate that. And we'll look specifically at how we did that. Balancing demand with capacity, that was our work in progress limits. And so that takes a little bit of, it's a higher level of maturity to get the benefits of that, but absolutely critical to removing the chaos from these teams. And so being able to balance our demand of the team with the capacity they have to deliver, and being able to measure that with performance metrics were critical. And then, as I alluded to earlier, small batch delivery, so we could demonstrate progress on a regular basis, was also what we're after. We do use a Kanban maturity model as kind of the playbook or guideline on how to evolve these teams to getting better benefits out of this. And so I think there's a new version of the book that's just been published, but most of our teams were at level 0. They're just oblivious that there's a better way to manage the work than what they're doing. And so we take them to level 1, then level 2, and then level 3 if we can get them up there. But getting to level 1 is pretty quick. Getting to level 2 takes some practice. This is a crawl, walk, run, fly kind of model. And so we don't want people attempting level 3 stuff until they get a good foundation at level 2. So no running till you at least can walk effectively. And so it's turned out to be a really good model for us and allows us to have conversations about where we are today and how we improve and get to the next level of maturity so we get better benefits. We used a 12-step process to implement this across the entire portfolio. And so the 12 steps initially are train the leadership, then based on the kind of a discovery session there, determine the number of teams and the makeup of the teams, and allows us to design a custom roadmap for implementation, which is essentially figure out who the starting teams are going to be that you're going to pilot with to design the system, and then who are the majority of the teams that you're going to focus on migrating to the common instance and getting their dashboards created and their boards set up to model the way they work. And then who are the lagging teams, right? So step 4, 7, and 10 are just defining the different teams that you're going to take on this journey. After you start your pilot, you design the program Kanban level stuff as well. So that's performance metrics and dashboards, and your strategy for work breakdown structure. After you've got them the pilot team's running for a little while, you got enough data that then you can start the cadence of operational risk management reviews for service. You implement a weekly impediment, a team of teams type meeting to manage the cross-team dependencies in there. And at that level, now you got a Kanban board for the program level that's used at those events or cadences to manage and focus those meetings. Then you go to the majority of the teams, and by that time you've got enough view of the data that you can now start the portfolio governance. And then once you got the portfolio governance in place, once again, all those performance review sessions are driven with dashboards. We're looking at performance metrics of the teams as well as the exceptions to the status of the work. And so we'll look at how we manage that. And then the last thing, after you get the remaining teams kind of cleaned up and everybody up and the reporting working across the entire portfolio, we look at how do we train the teams to get really good at this continuous process improvement. So how do they do self-assessments to determine how they're performing, and which of their policies are working for them, which are not, and how do they change those. So we take a focus on continuous improvement with the teams, and then we continue to engage with them on a regular basis to make sure they're not getting stuck or stagnating. Because we're measuring the performance, the actual performance of the team on a regular basis, we can tell when they start to stagnate or get stuck, and then we can offer help to go back in and self-correct. So that's our 12-step model across the portfolio to get all the different teams. Like I said, I've done this for 24 teams. Most of them are on average 10 to 15 teams. For each of those teams, it's fit for purpose design. So we want to adapt to the way they work today, but we do want to get an operating environment up that supports our ability to roll all the performance data up and implement these fast feedback loops. So each of the teams kind of go through these 5 steps, or at least the first 4 with each of the teams. And so step 1 is just meet with them to get the details of where their challenges are, what their structure looks like, who the key stakeholders and leadership are, and then you design the Kanban system for that team based on their workflow. So you get ADO configured to support their workflow and the type of problems they're doing, including interfaces to other tools. Like if they're handling a lot of tickets and service now, we build that interface in as part of the design. Then we get enough of the data in the system for a couple of weeks, 2 to 4 weeks worth of their backlog refined. So we work with product owners, service owners to make sure they understand how to define that work and to prioritize it based on value. And then we bring the team in and train the team up on how to navigate the tool if they haven't done it before, and how we need to tag data for exceptions, and so classification of work exceptions. And that's really it. Team operates for about 4 to 6 weeks. Then we have enough data that we can start looking at where their bottlenecks are, how they can improve. And so that's the kind of the team level steps for implementing it. We do look, when we meet with the team, we look at the entire full life cycle from concepts all the way through deployment and support and operations. But we start with what they do today, the team does. So it may be a development team. In that case, we make sure we establish the commitment point for when they commit to delivering work in the near future, and then the acceptance point, and that allows us to measure the system lead time. And then we're looking at cycle time, how long work's sitting around in particular workflow steps on their board. That identifies the bottleneck, so we can take action to improve that. So we're focused on the flow efficiency of the work through this system, even though we're looking upstream of that commitment point and downstream as well. So we keep that big picture in mind when we're designing systems, and you'll see why here in a minute. But for the teams, it's critical that we're modeling their work on a board, their Kanban system, based on commitment point and acceptance point. Now, upstream Kanban is to the left of that commitment point, and that's all about focused on effectiveness, making sure we're doing the right things, and we prioritize the work for the team based on value, and we've taken care of as much of the preliminary work as possible before the team commits to it. That's what good definitions, acceptance criteria, resolving dependencies. So we like to resolve dependencies before the team commits to the work. So if you look, scaling Kanban is actually inherent to Kanban. Kanban says start with what we do today and then agree to improve in these through experiments and measure the results of those improvements. So what happens is as you look further upstream of the team to try to figure out where the bottlenecks are and improve the value that we're delivering, you start looking, you're getting into program management. As you expand and look even farther upstream over time, you get all the way up to funding and portfolio management, making sure we're working on the right stuff. And so that's all stakeholder demand is that upstream Kanban. Our systems implement that. The way we've got them designed for the portfolio is from portfolio to program level to development as well as deployment, and then even in operations for some of the teams. Okay, all those boards, all that work as it goes from concept through funding, through program coordination, development and deployment and operations is all linked together. Being able to strategically link this data together is extremely important for being able to scale. And so we're able to break our work down, basically work breakdown structure in Azure DevOps, and the templates that we use are portfolio initiatives that scan across multiple services within the portfolio, or even initiatives that scan across multiple portfolios. So that's the highest level. Those things can take years for us to implement, at least quarters. Initiatives are kind of at the service level. That's where we're looking at what are we doing for a particular service or segment of the portfolio over the next year. Epics are then defined and owned at the service level. So this is what the team's going to deliver in the next 3 months. A lot of our teams have this concept of super sprint planning and our super sprints. Those are 4-month initiatives. Other teams will have 3 quarterly based initiatives where they define what they expect to achieve at the quarterly basis, and then they break those down into the features, something they can complete in weeks or a month, not multiple months. So the features get broke down, eventually down to product backlog items, user stories, things that we can complete in days, and tasks down into half-day chunks or a few days. But the key is break the work down, have it linked such that we can see it in our backlog. So we've got clear transparency of the work breakdown from strategic to tactical execution. And then we've got the ability to see progress of that work every few days. So that gives us a level of confidence with respect that we're headed on the right trajectory with the work the teams are doing. Okay. Kanban System and Azure DevOps has these components. We visualize the workflow, not just the work. It's not just to-do, doing, done. We're modeling the workflow steps the team goes through. We define the commitment point, and we also track activities upstream of the team committing to the work. So breaking that work down from epics to features to product backlog items, it's all tracked on the board, as well as the workflow it takes to develop those and refine those. The portfolio level has that workflow step broke down on the epic board to 3 stage gates for most of the teams in IT. And so they have 3 standard stages they go through for funding and approval. And so those represented on the Kanban board as specific steps in their workflow to achieve funding. And then those are broken down into features, eventually down to the team level on PBI board. At PBI board, we're also focused on delivery point or when the work's finished, and then it eventually goes on into archive or is handed off to other teams for them to do deployment and operations work. We're representing different types of work here. So the template has standard work types for epic, feature, those things we looked at, but there's also been added risks and issues. Like I said, we still have a lot of teams that are doing the traditional project management, so they're managing risks in more of a traditional model, and those are work item types as well in Azure DevOps that have been added to our template. We set these work in progress limits by the workflow steps, and so from the commitment point to delivery point, each of those has work in progress limits that we use to help the teams to stop multitasking so they can speed the flow of work. We write the policies or the teaming agreements down for each of the workflow columns. So Azure DevOps has a way to do that such that you can just move your cursor on top of the name of the column and it will pop up a little note and that's where we document our policies for the workflow steps. We also use wiki pages to document our policies. And of course, we have dashboards with flow metrics for cumulative flow and our system and cycle time. And then we implement fast feedback loops with our automated reporting. And we'll take a look at that here in a minute. and that allows us to significantly increase speed. The other thing we do is, while each of these teams has their own fit-for-purpose board, we start with a kind of a standard board and then customize it to the teams. And so we often see what we call class service in Kanban, defined as swim lanes on the board for urgent type work or blocked work, emergency type work. And then a column for planned, committed work. A lot of times that's their project work. And then a column for on-demand or unplanned activities, business as usual type work. So we can segment the work on the board, and it seems to help teams significantly. And so an instance of that is when we have urgent work, it's always the highest priority. We have a policy that says how we'll behave with respect to that. And then once we write those policies, you can say, you know, we're gonna stop whatever we're working on currently and handle the urgent work, and then we'll go back to our work. Or our policy will say, you know, we're going to finish what we're working on today because our work's broke down in things we can complete in days, and then we'll take the urgent work activity and work on it next before we go to the backlog, pull anything else forward. And so those policies can vary for urgent work, and we document those on a wiki page. Eventually you can get into resources on your teams can start looking at how much time they're going to spend on planned work versus their operational type work or business as usual work. So it might be, I'm going to spend 10% of my time dedicated to urgent activities, 25% on planned, and the remaining on business as usual. But they can start then trying to identify how they're going to allocate their time to work, and then we can measure that. A couple of other things in setting this up, we talked about how we break the work down, but we also need to structure the area paths in Azure DevOps to support the hierarchy. This is critical for us to be able to automate the reporting. And so what you have is the area path is defined in Azure DevOps, and we set it up for portfolio type activities, program activities where you're going across multiple services, the service levels, each service within a portfolio or program is set up such that they have their own area. And then teams within those services are set up in that hierarchy. So this allows us to use the under operator in our queries. Instead of saying it equals this, we can say under. So if I'm at the, say, service A, I can say, show me all the work under service A, and it'll go pull the work for team A, team B, team C, and allow me to summarize that work on a dashboard. So we'll look at an example of that in a minute. We also have in that hierarchy, we have a lot of independent teams on some of these portfolios, so they're not tied directly to a service. And then we even have individuals who are have their own personal Kanban board for managing work sometimes. They're individual contributors to portfolio, not working on a team or not working within a service. Okay, we do use STATIK in Kanban. The STATIK process is a system thinking approach to implement Kanban. So we do go through that with the teams to utilize the fit for purpose in order to make sure we've designed the systems that work effectively with them. Here's an example of a board in Azure DevOps. And so those swim lanes I was talking about are represented. The top one says escalated, blocked, and waiting. So when things are marked as blocked or they're waiting on other teams, they get moved up here. So during daily stand-up, we're focused just on those activities. We're not going through the whole board. We're just focused on how we can unblock the work, how we can collaborate with one another to assist in speeding those, resolving those blocked issues and speeding that up. The next swim lane that we put in here often is urgent, emergency, and break-ins. I'll talk a little bit more about break-ins in a minute. Planned work, like I said, kind of project type activity or new features we're developing versus unplanned work or on-demand support type activities. This just lay out the board. You can see that we have columns across the top, and this may be pretty small to some of you. But the way this works is we have a backlog, could be 1,000 things here. We have a column for prioritization. So a product owner or delivery, a demand manager would prioritize these top things in here. Could be top 3, top 10, but he's pulling things out of the backlog and refining them. And we have a refining step here where we're actually trying to resolve dependencies as well as make sure we've documented acceptance criteria and done the work breakdown structure appropriately. And then it's ready for commitment is a column here. This is in traditional Scrum, this would be your product backlog of things ready to present to the team for them to pull. Then the team commits to it. We move them over here. They're committed, ready to start. We start our Kanban timer then for system lead time. And then they're in progress, validate, finish. But these can be customized for how the team works. Typically, things stay over here and finish for final acceptance or for a team to report out on at the, we typically, most portfolios have a meeting every 2 weeks where they're looking at what the team's accomplished. And so they'll sit there and then we'll move them to archive after that reporting period. So that's kind of what a model looks like to start with. But like I said, it's a common starting point, but teams customize this based on the way they work. A lot of times they'll have additional swim lanes for segments of the work that they're doing. Okay, let's talk about how this stuff works for reporting. So we use tags in ADO today to report exceptions to progress or things that we want recognition for. So a traditional kind of flow of work I just talked about on the board, you prioritize it, you prepare it, it's ready for the team to commit. Once you start on it, in the perfect world, they would work on it until it's finished, and then it would be reviewed, and then it goes to archive. But the majority of the time, it doesn't work like that. And so teams get blocked often. So we just add a simple tag to a work item in Azure DevOps that says block. It takes 2 seconds to add one of these tags. So first time you type it in, you got to type it. After that, it pops up if you type the first couple of characters. So tags are how we handle exceptions of work in there. So we'll put block, means I need attention. If we can't resolve it in daily stand-up, we'll escalate it. And by escalating it, we change the tag from block to escalate, and we assign it to whoever who we're escalating and put a note within the notes section with the @ sign for their name. That way they get notified immediately. It also shows up on the dashboard immediately as, hey, we've escalated something. So the person we escalated to gets immediate notification, and we got a note down there asking them what we're escalating and why we're escalating. A lot of times if something's blocked, we'll be able to identify we're waiting on another team for something, so we change the tag to waiting on others. That's dependency management type activities. We typically use that once we have agreement from the other team. It's blocked until we get agreement from them about a committed date for when we'll get that. And then we leave it as waiting on others. It means we've started progress on it, but we can't make progress until this other team provides what we need. Sometimes we have waiting on us where maybe something critical's come in and we've had to put something on hold till we finish that critical item and then come back. So we use this waiting on us tag. Sometimes we abandon work. So often we'll defer work till a later date. So those are just tags that we stick on the work items themselves, and they automatically show up on our dashboards for reporting. Challenged is another tag that we use. If we're working on something that's not going according to what we thought, we're having some challenges, we'll tag it. That's for discussion at the performance review, portfolio or program level performance reviews. Awesome. Awesome is tag that we use for accomplishments that the team wants recognition for when they feel like they've really done something good and want to make leadership aware of it. They just tag a work item and put a note in there why they think it's awesome. And then the notes automatically pop up on the dashboard so they don't have to go looking for the data. It's all on the dashboard. We'll take a look at that in a minute. Break-ins. Let's talk about break-ins. So as we were using the static process, talking to teams about one of their challenges, what their greatest challenges were, one of them is they couldn't make their commitments on a regular basis. So we investigated why. And so leadership was doing a drive-by, showing up saying, hey, I need this by Thursday at 3 p.m., drop what you're doing. And so that was happening on a fairly regular basis in these portfolios. So talk to leadership, they actually requested we come up with a mechanism to control that. So we came up with a tag called a break-in. When a team gets those kind of requests, normally they would say, you know, what a great idea, we'll put it on backlog, we'll review it next Thursday and give you a estimate of when it'll get done. Well, that conversation doesn't always go well. So when you do have to do something that doesn't follow our traditional flow of work, we tag it as a break-in, and it sets off a break-in alarm on our dashboard, and then we review those on a regular basis with leadership, and it helps drive better behavior from leadership with urgent requests. It hasn't eliminated them, but it's driven better behavior. And so we also have other tags that we use. These are all standard tags across the portfolio. Everyone's agreed to use, so we can automate our status reporting and implement these fast feedback loops. So other tags we use are things like deployment, risks, issues can also be used. Here's one of our dashboards. This is automated dashboards, so when a team changes, it adds a tag to an item or changes it, it automatically reflected on the dashboard. Now this is a service level dashboard. You can have dashboards at the team level, the portfolio level, or service. And so in this particular instance, this is a service that has 8 teams that make up that service. And so here's some contact information up at the top of this, but by collecting this across the service can have performance review sessions, look at all the team and all the work that they're producing and the exceptions of primarily of, you know, when they need to take action to improve things. And so a couple of things were critical for this. Single source of truth for work status. There are no more PowerPoints, emails floating around about the status of work. Everything's done in Azure DevOps. There may be managing tickets on that front end through ServiceNow or something, but all work is managed in Azure DevOps. The single source of truth is critical to roll this up at the portfolio level and have confidence in the data. We have been able to reduce 80% of the status preparation time of traditional reporting over what we did the way we were doing it before to the way we do it now. 80% reduction. That gives the teams more time. They're out of not attending status report meetings, and it gives them time back to get work done. These dashboards have a service level summary information. So this is a roll-up of all the work within a service. So awesome, challenging. These have drill down capabilities. You click on awesome, it'll take you to a list of all 15 awesome items. Each of these has that drill down capability. And then you can see on the right, we have the service delivery lead time. That's across all the teams. That's on average how long as a service is taking us to deliver work, 13 days. We delivered 184 PBIs in this super sprint and 119 other items, bugs, issues, other activities. So that service level information is really useful in those service level performance review to measure how we're doing, what's been escalated, What are the break-ins, the frequency of the break-ins, what are risks, those kind of things. And then in the bottom section of this, each of those 8 teams has a section down here where you have the details of that. So you have what they committed to delivering for their epics and this super sprint. A lot of times we'll have what activities they're doing that are at the epic level that are not committed through the super sprint or operational type work. We have what they consider is awesome, and if you move the cursor over the notes section, it pops it up right there on the screen. So you can go through this pretty quick in a performance review session to look at what are the challenging activities, awesome activities, what are the other things blocked, escalated, and issues that need management or leadership's attention so we can enable those fast feedback loops. We don't wait for a weekly or every 2-week review to take action on this. We've got leadership looking at these on a day, multiple times a day, and they take actions as soon as it comes in. They're not waiting for a weekly performance review to take action. They're taking action real time. All this is real-time data, not somebody's snapshot of what the status of data is. It requires the teams to keep the boards up to date on a daily basis. Here's breakdown of total work in the system by the state that it's in. Cumulative flow allows us to see how work's flowing through the system. System lead time and for development and system lead time for deployment. We can measure things differently, typically on swim lanes, but allows us to measure those different types of work. This is the critical part of this being able to work for continuous improvement. We look at these system lead time charts. This is actuals, right? No estimates here. This is actual deliverable. You highlight mouse on one of these, it'll pop up a little note and says what it happened on that day. And so what this says is 14 days on average, how long it takes us to do development activities, and we've done 135 of them in this super sprint. But in a retrospective or performance review session, we start looking at these and we say, hey, we have a few outliers here. This one took 91 days. You know, this one took 52 days. And we ask ourselves, how can we eliminate a few of these? If you just go after a few of these, you substantially reduce this average days for completion on work. Now, this is probably a little more information than a new team would need. You need them to run for 4 to 6 weeks before the data becomes meaningful, but then you can start looking at these outliers and figuring out what you can do to remove the bottlenecks out of your system. Very powerful. Okay, it's all about performance and continuous improvement, about removing waste in the system, which is wait time. It's the amount of time we start work, then we wait on something, or we're interrupted for something else, and then we work on it some more, and eventually we might get to finishing it. We have so much work sitting around that's 90% complete and we never finish it. So work in progress limits help there, but we have to use that performance data to look at our wait time and take action to resolve that wait time in order to speed execution or improve our flow efficiency. A couple of other things, we'll open it up to Q&A. You got to set some cadences. Team level cadences are typically would look like backlog refinement. If you're doing Scrum, would be sprint planning, daily Scrum, your demo and a retrospective. Kanban's got very similar ones. They're all here it's a regular cadence of events. And the key for us in the portfolio implementations are the retrospectives or delivery review meetings need to be driven with those dashboards, with boards and dashboards. So they focus those meetings around performance and where things are blocked. And so at the program level or service level, we have a weekly or monthly meeting there where we're looking at those dashboards and taking actions to improve. And at the portfolio level, could be monthly, could be every 2 weeks is pretty common cadence for these type of events. So all of these are designed to be fast feedback loops. And like I said, at the team level, these can be based upon how they're working. Are they doing traditional project management, Kanban, Scrum? You get a little different flavor of these, but everybody needs to be doing performance review meetings occasionally down there. The service or programs need to be doing them, and the portfolio needs to be doing them. It all needs to be driven with looking at a dashboard to focus the meeting, keep it short and actionable. And then that allows us, by using those real-time tags, flagging the data, you're getting real-time status reporting and able to take action on those and see the improvements. Okay, before I opened up, I just wanted to, you'll get a copy of these slides, and there's some free references out there for some of this stuff. David's original book you'll need to purchase, but there's a couple of consolidated books on Kanban and Upstream Kanban that are really handy to have. You get these in electronic format. Then for kind of a deeper knowledge of how all this fits together is Mike Burrow's got a couple of books I really like. Kanban from the Inside is a practitioner's guide to how this works, not just theory, but how you implement it and use it. And then right to left has got some really good information about how we scale this across multiple teams or an enterprise. So those are good. I need to put on here the Kanban maturity book as well. But a little about me. I've been doing this a long time, but I want to open it up to any questions. Elizabeth, do we have any questions?
Yeah, hi Dan. Thanks so much for sharing your experience and knowledge with us. That was great. We did have a few questions that came in. The first one is actually, are there any books or guidance specifically on scaled Kanban? Now I know you just went through this, so we can go ahead and skip to the next question if you're okay with that.
Well, and I'm looking at writing a little ebook on Kanban at scale. And so if you're interested in learning more about this, you can drop me an email and I'll be glad to let you know when that's available.
All right, thanks, Dan. And then our second question is, what are some failures that you typically see from the upper leadership when beginning the process to scale Kanban?
So they typically are kind of in panic mode when I show up. And the reason they ask me to come in is because they don't have transparency to the work that their teams are doing. And often it's vendors, not just staff on site, but they're relying on some service level agreement from a vendor and they have no visibility of what's going on. So they're really asking, when you use that static process, ask them where their biggest pain points are. Most of the time it comes down to transparency, right? And the second one is they're looking for ways to help the teams. You know, leadership is really these days wanting to take an active role and participate with teams and help them. And so by implementing those dashboards with fast feedback loops, we're able to help them react and know what the team's struggling with on a regular basis, what they're challenged with, and then how to contribute to helping resolve those issues. Any others?
Thanks so much, Dan. Actually, that is all. So thank you all for attending today's session. And Dan Reed, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. It was great. The recording of the session will be available at HoustonTechFest.com soon. We hope you enjoy the rest of Virtual Houston Tech Fest, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your day. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.